Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we'll have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the weather warnings as we do have a yellow fog warning issued for tomorrow. As we've got high pressure building in now, we're going to see cold, foggy conditions with an inversion taking place for many parts of England, especially through central, southern and eastern areas where the upper air temperatures are going to be warmer than the actual surface temperatures, and that rarely does happen. Upper air temperatures can be average to potentially above average over the course of the next few days, but especially areas in the south where we're seeing little mixing of air and higher pressure. It keeps this layer of very cold air towards the surface. So some areas in the south under cloud and fog over the course of the next few days will hardly get above 2 or 3 degrees in the day and down to maybe -5 or -6 overnight. So yes, it's going to be dry. For many areas there will be clear skies and very few showers at all, but it could be really quite cold in quite a few places. We'll look through the UK if you have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the course of the next 5 days. As I said, it's remaining cold. There could be a bit of a pattern change in the longer term with more mixing of air towards the middle to end of next week. And as we'll see on the GFS, GM, ECMWF and the ensembles, the high pressure that is building over the top of us is going to ridge northwards towards the end of this working week into next weekend. So around 6-7 days time, we're going to see this high pressure try to get towards Greenland and maybe Iceland, and it looks likely that a northerly wind will be coming for somewhere in northwest Europe. Some of the models have very cold air spreading into Scandinavia, others have that colder air going towards the UK. So have a look at what the various models are showing, and it all depends on how far north as that high pressure gets, where it does connect up with a bit of an Arctic high that does develop as well. And we'll have to see, because that will decide the weather for the last few days of January, whether it would just be a continue high pressure, cool conditions, or we'll see a proper cold northerly flow return. Of course, we bring the risk back for snow. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure to like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well. The link's in the description. So just starting on the live radar, you can see it is a widely dry day. According to this bit later than normal, around 4:30. So it is starting to get cold, but it is widely very dry. A few odd showers here or there, but pretty much a bone dry day for many areas. A bit of cloud around, but a lot of areas are clear skies, and some areas are actually trapped under quite a dense layer of fog, and we're able to see that on the temperature charts in a minute, where areas are still very cold. You can see out towards Europe where low pressure is now mixing with that cold air, giving the very heavy snowfall through parts of central, eastern and southeastern Europe. Again, many centimetres of snow will be seen there, and it just shows you where that low pressure that gave all that cold and wintry conditions in the north and the west especially has now moved to. Now, I've put on the temperatures as of just around 4 p.m. or a bit later. You can see how it is very cold in places, especially through the parts of the West Midlands, Western and Southwest England, parts of South Wales, and this is where we have seen lingering fog. You can also see forks heading up towards the Midlands, Northern England, and again, sometimes you see this and it correlates with the higher ground, but this here is not correlating with higher ground. It's correlating where we've seen dense fog patches where temperatures have hardly got above freezing today. Elsewhere, even where that fog has lifted, very cold morning, temperatures widely below freezing in central areas, and throughout the day, maybe around 3 to 5 degree high. So still quite cold, still below average, but not bitterly cold like it has been under this dense fog. You can see it extends further northwards all the way to Scotland, but parts of Scotland where we've seen some very heavy snowfall over the last few days, now temperatures are into the mid to maybe high single digits, warmer than it is towards southern England. And you can see the temperature contrast, parts of the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, where we've got westerly winds pushing round the higher pressure, bringing more mixing of air, and we're seeing those warmer upper air masses descending further down the atmosphere, giving those warmer surface conditions, whereas as for the UK, whereas for parts of England and Wales, where we're under that higher pressure, warm air mass is moving in, or milder air mass is moving in overhead, but because we've got a lack of winds, lack of mixing of air, we keep this very cold, dense layer of air at the surface. And this is going to continue for the next few days. Now, if you look at the weather warnings, we do have a fog warning issued for tomorrow. Fog is transitioning eastwards overnight tonight. Again, it all depends on the exact position of the high pressure nudging eastwards under that centre of the high. We're seeing fog all the way from northern England, northeast England, down through the East Midlands, East Anglia, and sort of surrounding London, but not including London here. Again, it's from 2 a.m. until 11 a.m. tomorrow, and some areas here probably will last throughout the day. But freezing fog may lead to difficult driving conditions and could cause some travel delays in some areas on Saturday night into Sunday morning. Areas of freezing fog are expected to develop on Saturday night, dense in places and perhaps slow to clear on Sunday. Visibility as low as 50 to 100 millimetres could be encountered in a few areas. Some untreated surfaces could turn icy. This combination meaning potentially difficult driving conditions. High likelihood, lower end of the impact. Not all areas here will see freezing fog, but a lot of areas here will see some fogginess and some quite bad fog in places as well. And even elsewhere, we're going to see a widespread frost, so it will be quite icy tomorrow morning. So make sure you do take care up there. But on the other hand, it will look quite wintry out there as well, with a lot of surfaces, especially grassy surfaces and trees and plants turning completely white overnight. Now, if you look at the UKV and have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the course of the next 5 days, you see a weather front tried to push in earlier this morning, but made very little progress at all. And it's been a generally dry day, but a few showers across just the far coast of western parts of the British Isles. But again, on the live radar, not really too much there. A few clouds around, especially further northwards and westwards under that weather front, that weakening weather front. But again, mostly dry as we saw on the live radar. Through this evening, it will remain very clear in the east, and you can start to see fog patches developing there. So that layer of cloud there where the mouse is, that is thick fog developing. Again, eastwards of this trapped cloud area, which is that weather front that keeps getting fizzled out as it comes into contact with the high pressure. And anywhere east of that, we'll see a hard overnight frost, and of course those fog patches developing as well. Some rain pushing into the west, but again, it just fizzles out and gives some light, patchy, maybe moderate periods of rain at times before again just completely disintegrating through the afternoon. And as we head through Sunday night, once again for the south, southern and east areas, some thick fog developing, maybe not quite as widespread, but it will equally be very cold for Monday morning. And then Monday afternoon again, a widely dry day, maybe a bit more cloud around in quite a few areas, especially further northwards and westwards, but once again it will be cool and pretty dry as well. Through Monday into Tuesday, still very dry and clearer skies in the south, meaning once again a very hard overnight frost, and again some fog patches with that as well. And through Tuesday afternoon into Wednesday, we start to see that cloud transition southwards, and that is showing a bit of a change where we do see eventually the air masses mix a bit more, and you can see that clearer air mass coming in from the north, and that's because we're seeing that orientation of the high pressure shift slightly to give us a bit of a northerly wind. But the northerly wind is sort of originating from the mid-Atlantic, so it's not particularly cold air, at least initially, but it could get a little bit chilly towards the end of the run. Again, not anything exceptional, maybe down to -5 isotherm, nothing particularly cold though, below average though, of course. If you look at the upper air temperatures, you'll be able to see right now we do have chilly air in the southeast, and that's why it is so cold, trapped under the higher pressure. But it is getting nudged away, and even when it does get nudged away through Sunday into Monday, it still remains cold at the surface because of the inversion. So the cold air is helping at the moment, and it's embedding at the surface, but the upper air temperatures start to rise through tomorrow, but we will still stay cold because that layer of cold air is still towards the surface, and we've got this wedge of milder air that is giving out thicker cloud and a bit of drizzle and rain for western areas. Into Monday, eventually, we do see that much milder air mass spread in for all through Wednesday, and then into Thursday, eventually a cooler air mass spreads in. But once again, it is cold air mass, but it's not ridiculously cold because it's quite transitional with it quite up and down in terms of air masses here. So a colder air mass coming in for the latter part of the week, but it probably won't change the surface conditions all too much, other than giving clearer skies and probably some showers as well. Again, if we have a look at the 2-metre temperatures, you'll be able to see how cold it is over the next few days. This afternoon, many areas not rising much above 4 or 5 degrees in central and eastern parts, but for the Republic of Ireland, 10 or 11 in places. Overnight tonight, those temperatures will plummet once again. Look at that, -2, maybe -3, or even -4 or 5 in a few spots. Again, in the south and the east, not where we've seen the coldest air recently, which was further northwards and westwards, and parts of Republic of Ireland staying around 8 or 9 degrees overnight. Through tomorrow afternoon, some areas in the east where we see that freezing fog will hardly get above 2 or 3 degrees, and widely sort of 5 or 6 elsewhere, and again milder further northwards and westwards. And through Sunday night into Monday, another hard overnight frost, maybe -5 to -7 through rural areas of central and eastern England, really cold there. And then into Monday afternoon, once again, temperatures not rising much above 2 to 4 degrees, so perhaps even colder under this inversion for the next few days than we saw during the colder spell and wintry spell, at least in the north and west, earlier this week. And as we head through Monday night into Tuesday, again, a hard overnight frost, -5 to -7 once again in places. And into Tuesday, look at that, 1 or 2 degrees trapped under that area of freezing fog through the afternoon. Really cold indeed, further northwards and westwards, 10 to 12 degrees. So areas that had an amber snow warning only a few days ago, 12 degrees in parts of northern and eastern Scotland, but for central southern England, 1 or 2. Just showing you atmospheric dynamics really can do a big deal to the temperatures at the surface. Even the upper air temperatures are not even that cold, and that's why we always emphasise in the winter, when we see high pressure sat over us, you've got to ignore the air masses, because we can see a pattern like this develop where we see cold air embedded at the surface, an inversion taking place with a lot of frost and fog. As we head through into Wednesday, overnight temperatures once again -4 or -5, but you can see much milder air just get swept in by Wednesday afternoon. Maybe still 4 or 5 in the far southeast, but much milder air moving in. But that mild wedge lasts only a few hours through Wednesday evening, and by the time we're waking up on Thursday, more widely cold, even for northern and western areas, as we do see that cooler northerly flow come in. But again, nothing ridiculously cold, just colder than average, and returning generally colder air for all. So we do now have a look at the longer range and see what that is showing over the course of the next couple of weeks. As I'm recording this, the 12 o'clock runs are coming out, but they haven't fully come out, so I'd rather show a complete 6 o'clock run. See the high pressure building in at the moment, and across the southeast, where that high is more centred, is where we're seeing the inversion in the coldest weather over the next few days. Eventually, it does nudge out further westwards, and you can see by Wednesday, a brief little northerly wind, and again, pushes the cold air mass in for a time. But it's as we head towards the weekend, we see high pressure ridge towards Greenland and Iceland, and we see a bit of an Arctic high developing. If you put on the Northern Hemisphere view, an Arctic high developing, basically where we see high pressure sat right over the Arctic, and these ridging attempts from the North Atlantic are trying to connect, and that would plunge us into a very cold northerly wind. Now, the GFS has a go here. We do pull in cool air for a time, and that area is reasonably cold with its potential equivalent temperatures, especially down the eastern parts. It's very cold for a few days, but eventually westerly flow does prevail, flattening that ridge, and it could actually go a bit wintry there if we maintain a bit of higher pressure towards Greenland, a bit of a northeasterly there, cold air embedded in the east where the front's approaching, could be a bit of a snowy scenario there, but eventually the westerlies do win out. But it is a weird blocked pattern to the northern hemisphere, and it actually goes quite stormy there for a time. But once again, it's not your conventional pest from the west, tropospheric polar vortex sat towards Greenland. There is a lot of amplification in the jet stream going on here, and ridging towards the North Pole. So things will be very volatile and mobile over the next few days. As received from the GM, the Eastern Blue F, they both do different things, but has that potential, perhaps in a week's time, as we head towards next weekend, pulling a northerly wind in, and how things do change beyond that, we will have to see. But the GFS goes much colder for a few days towards the end of the month, before turning milder from the west. If we look at the GEM, see how that does compare over the course of the next couple of days, and the next 10 days in general. Again, high pressure is in control. It ridges out further westwards, and it tries once again to build towards Greenland, and we pull in a northerly wind for a time right at the end of the run. But just looking how this is evolving, I wouldn't think this would ridge too much further northwards, and we do pull a very cold air mass in for a time, but it doesn't maintain itself. It will definitely give very cold weather towards the east, but we are centred over high pressure, so there'll be very little winteriness with this at all. Maybe a few showers down the east coast, but we'd have to see this high pressure reach much further northwards and this an easterly wind to come in to really get anything majorly cold and snowy here. But you can see the temperature deviation. Very cold air is flooding out of the Arctic here. And again, if you look at the northern hemisphere view with the high pressure, a bit of an Arctic high developing, but again, we need to see this high pressure penetrate and ridge towards that and sort of spit up these lobes of polar vortex to see that happen. But here again, signs of colder pattern returning, but nothing locked in as of yet. Again, we wouldn't expect to know at day 7 to day 10. We'd expect to see a bit of flip-flopping here or there, but just signs appearing from the GFS and the GEM today. However, the ECMWF has a very different situation going on. High pressure builds in. We see a bit of ridging from the high pressure next weekend, but that ridge is very small indeed, and it just gets flattened, and we just go from go towards a pest from the west pattern with all those blues locked up over Greenland and no signs of any Arctic high at all. High pressure building in substantially towards Alaska, and that would be quite a bit of a heat wave there. Look at the upper air temperatures that draw very warm air into Alaska, and it's actually plunging North America very cold there through parts of the United States and Canada. But for the UK, we're sort of flip-flopping between milder and colder air masses. No signs of any northerly wind at all. And the big thing with this is even next weekend, where both the GFS and GEM have quite sharp ridging and a cold air mass spreading at least down the eastern side of the country, the ECMWF has nothing. So it just shows you the uncertainty there is with how the jet stream will respond, how much amplification we will see. And of course, as you probably saw in yesterday's video, we've got a stratospheric warming taking place over the course of the next week or two. Maybe even a sudden stratospheric warming taking place with the reversal of the zonal winds into early February. And that could all be playing into this volatility we're seeing and uncertainty. Because if that did come through and propagate through the atmosphere, it would put a big high pressure system over the North Pole, and it would allow this ridging a lot more. So perhaps maybe the GFS is starting to catch on onto that bit of warming, a bit of losing that sort of westerly momentum throughout the troposphere. But we will have to see. Again, it is speculative. We will only really know if the stratospheric warming has any impact by the time we sort of get to the point where that where any blocking from that is sitting pretty much bang on in the models, and we'll be able to say one thing led to the other. But for the time being, it is very much speculative. We've just got to keep an eye on it, and that stratospheric warming is going to create a lot of volatility. So I do think we'll see a lot of model switching over the course of the next few days. If you look at the ensemble members, the GFS is definitely quite bold in producing average or below average weather over the course of the next few weeks. Even when we see that slightly milder air mass towards the middle of the week, as we saw from the UKV, at least for the southeast, it's going to remain fairly chilly, maybe 7 or 8 degrees for a time, but back down cooler once again, and it's staying very dry all the way to the end of January, so higher pressure generally in control and below average upper air temperatures. And that's pretty consistent from the GFS, and they've shown it quite a lot over the last few days. Right towards the first week of February, more signs of more Atlantic systems moving in, but again, I just think that's a bit of uncertainty and a bit more volatility in the longer range. You're always going to get those westerly runs returning, and it just trends towards average. Again, you look at the dew points, generally around freezing, again, indicating pretty chilly weather. Nothing Atlantic-driven here. You'd see those dew points getting towards 5 degrees or above. Definitely more of a northerly influence or under higher pressure with cooler air masses, and the 2 metre temperatures not getting much above 5 or 6 degrees over the next sort of 7 to 10 days. Beyond that, perhaps maybe 6, 7, 8 degrees as we see a bit more uncertainty in those temperatures. But if you compare it to the ECMWF, it has a completely different idea, more average to above average over the course of the next few weeks. Still keeping us reasonably dry through to the end of January, but you can see from the midnight run, cold the next few days, quite a bit milder for that little milder spell towards the middle of the week, and then it doesn't drop down cold once again. It actually stays average or above average for the foreseeable future, maybe until the first few days of February. So big uncertainty there. ECMWF definitely on the milder side of the ensembles. If we go to the 12 o'clock run yesterday from the ECMWF, perhaps trending is slightly cooler from the yesterday's run, but still slightly above average. And we compare it to the GFS on some members from the midnight run, back again is well below average for the foreseeable future. So we're definitely seeing a bit of uncertainty here, with the GFS definitely favouring more of a cooler outlook, drier, cooler outlook, but the ECMWF is trending drier. The operational one probably quite wet, but generally the ensemble members are drier, but slightly above average. So bit of discrepancy there between the ensembles, and again, just shows you all the volatility around at the moment. But the one certainty we do have, next 5 to 7 days, it's going to remain fairly cool, if not cold, especially through central, southern and eastern areas. It'll remain fairly dry and mild further north and westwards, but nothing ridiculously mild, and there could be some patchy rain as well, but nothing too significant. So we'll have to see what happens. There definitely is signs, perhaps, of cold weather returning towards the end of the month, but as we've seen from these ensembles, GFS is on board with something perhaps cooler, whereas the ECMWF definitely suggesting something milder. So we'll just have to see when those ensemble members in the models do sort of start to agree with each other, which will inevitably happen over the next few days, and I'll keep you updated with what happens with that. So anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.